What's up guys, and welcome to Kirkstall Abbey in Leeds. I'm standing in the entrance of the library. What better place to start than the monks' library? So we're going to have a walk around, we'll run the EMF and we'll see if we get anything. If we get any activity we'll stop and we'll ask out, but in the meantime I'll show you around the ruins and we'll do some of the history of that era, and if anything comes along we think it's paranormal, we'll see if we can get somebody to do something to the camera, like either an orb or a sound. We have been picking up a lot of sounds lately on some of our shoots. We've picked up footsteps in Highgate Cemetery and stones got thrown a couple of times. On some of our previous shoots we've picked up noises in the background and the occasional orb. So let's see what we get. So let's take you on a show around. So we're in Leeds and this is probably the main abbey in the Leeds area. It was from 1100 to the 1500s a Cistercian monks' abbey where they would pray and chant and read the Bible and just generally live a life of solitude. Not much solitude around here, it's more prone to dickheads now than monks, to be fair, but welcome to 2024. Nobody gives a about history much anymore, so it's up to people like us to keep it alive. So on that note, there's a lot of bricked up doors and I'll show you the size of this doorway. Look at the size of this doorway. If you watch part one, we were saying about how people were a lot shorter back then. They only grew to about 4 foot because their diets weren't as rich as what we have today. The doorways very short. It was the general height of people back then. So really, if we get any ghosts coming through from that era, they're going to be short in stature. They're not going to be very tall. This was the cloister, and this cloister, the open square, was the place where the Cistercian monks spent most of the time when they were not attending services in church. So this was like their recreation area, if you like. So they would have been all paved in stone back then. There would have been candlelight coming out of the walls, sconces, and they used to make the candles out of animal fats back in those days. They would use beef fat, pig fat, anything like that, and they would make a wick out of rope, old rope, and they would make all their own candles. Other rooms leading from the cloister. Let's go and see the other rooms. So this was all the recreation area for the monks, where they would have spent their time. They would have had certain times of the day when they were required to come down for prayer. I think dawn, noon, dusk and midnight, and the rest of the time was their own time. They would have had jobs that they had to do. Some would have been cooks, some would have brewed the wine, some would have brewed the beer, and just generally housekeeping, changed the candles, sweeping up. If they had any animals to take care of, vegetable gardens, there would have been monks to do that. This is the warming house. So this was the area, apparently, where between November and Easter each year, a fire burned in this room so that the monks could warm themselves. And only the base of the fireplace survives today. So let's see, this looks like it could have been it then. So this was where they came to get warm, because bearing in mind these stone buildings, like the castles of Scotland and England and Wales, very, very cold in the winter time. But once you've got a good roaring fire and you've heated up the stone, they can stay warm for days then. So the warming room, I guess, just if you're cold, come in here and have a warm. And there's still some steps and things here, look. Let's climb up and have a look up here. So these monasteries and abbeys that are in ruins, I think I told you if you watched any of our previous shoots, and you know I like to do the history on these particular shoots. So in 1539 Henry VIII, he demolished this place, or he got his soldiers to come up here They demolished this one, they demolished Whitby Abbey, they demolished Whalley Abbey. There's abbeys all over England that got demolished that are still standing in ruins today, because Henry VIII at the time, he wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon, his first queen. She was Catholic, and they'd been married for 20 years, and she'd only bore a daughter, Queen Mary, and he desperately wanted a son, and it wasn't happening with Catherine of Aragon. So he fell in love with, first of all, Mary Boleyn, which is Anne Boleyn's older sister. He had an affair with Mary Boleyn for a few years and produced a son with her called Henry Fitzroy. But he didn't marry Mary Boleyn, because by that time Anne Boleyn had come along and she really caught his eye. She really did. She was young, pretty, vivacious. She was the life and soul of all the parties. She could sing, she could dance, she could play instruments. She had a lot of friends. She had all these fancy balls and parties at Hampton Court and other places. So she really caught his eye. He wanted to be married to her, but she said to him, "I will not sleep with you until we are married." So they were together for 7 years, and then she demanded. I thought I heard a footstep behind me then, actually. She demanded, "You marry me." So eventually Henry said, "Okay, I will, but I'm going to have to divorce Catherine." He approached Cardinal Wolsey, his best friend, to go to Rome to plead on behalf. Can I divorce Catherine? I've met someone new. I want to marry Queen Anne Boleyn. And the Roman Church said, "No, you stay with Catherine of Aragon and you produce this son with your first queen." So in retaliation, Henry then started up his own church, the Church of England, which still stands today. And he had these places pulled down, kicked all the monks out, arrested them. They fled and they went into hiding in lots of big houses in the area. All the gold and wealth that these places held, like candlesticks, altarpieces, whatever they had in value, he took it all down to London, to the Tower of London, where we were just the other week, melted it all down and made coins out of it. Let's go and have a walk around. Alright, let's go through this door and see what is up here. I think this is the novices. It's where the new monks came to learn the routine of praying and just generally being a monk, just praying, devoting their entire lives to God. During the Middle Ages, this room may have been used for training monks or novices. So the Middle Ages was about the 1300s. So it would have been very big on silent prayer in those days. Okay, let's go in this direction. I'm just trying to keep away from the other people because it's hard to give you the history when there's a lot of background noise and stuff going on. Look at that there. We said before on part one, it looks like a cell of some description. But I don't think they actually took prisoners, the monks, because they were very religious and they were all about helping people, really. They weren't really about persecuting people at all. You could literally knock on the door if you were poor and they would come out and give you food and shelter if they could. They were very good people. They got persecuted, really. All because the king wanted everything his own way. And it's like the king got what he wanted, or heads would roll, literally, on the chopping block. So Henry VIII, he married Anne Boleyn, and it wasn't a popular wedding. Hardly anybody turned out to greet the new queen. And she was brought through the one of the tower gates at London Tower to be coronated and made Queen of England. And within 3 years she was back at the Tower of London having her head chopped off, because she tried for 3 years to get pregnant, and she tried for 3 years to give Henry a son. She gave birth to Elizabeth I, her daughter, and then she lost 2 babies in succession, and they were both boys. So Henry then really came down on her like a ton of bricks and said, "Madam, you have done this on purpose to displease me. Therefore, you are against me. Therefore, you do not want me to have a son. and I'm going to lock you in the tower, and I'm going to have the court question you and all of your friends and find out what you're all about. And this is what he did. So the woman that he fell in love with, he then locked her up in the tower and had her interrogated, and had all of her friends and brother, friends at court, all interrogated. And they were so terrified that they turned against her and said that yes, she was a witch, yes, she was this, yes, she was that. So he ordered her execution, and she was executed on Tower Green in London, at Tower of London. She was given a swift blade by a French swordsman. A very clean, very quick execution. It was a gruesome act, obviously, but it was a very quick death for her. By then, he'd already chose his third wife, Jane Seymour, and he still wanted to try for that son. But this is how I look at it, right? You've got a man who's got 6 wives, right? And he's not able to have a son. All 6 women cannot be a problem. I think Henry was firing blanks. Now, if I'd have said Henry was firing blanks, my head had been clean off by now. That's what I think. Henry was firing blanks. He had to be. Look at it by today's standards, right? You get women having IVF and all this, so they can have babies. And just nosing up there because it's a passageway. They try and I think a lot of the things with IVF, I've found people I know who've had it and people I know who are trying, it tends to produce triplets, twins, quadruplets, like even 6 babies. A lot of people who have the IVF now tend to have multiple children at one time. So that's quite interesting to look into why that happens. But back in those days, you'd go to your midwife, she would give you certain potions and she would give you certain things to have with your meals that would hopefully increase your potency and all that. They would pay people, to please, I've got to have this baby because the king needs an heir. And it was a pretty grim time if you were married to the King of England in those days and you couldn't get pregnant. Every day you was just depending and thinking, hopefully, today will be the day that I can say, I think I am with child, and hopefully it will be the heir to the throne of England. And their heads depended on it. And after Anne Boleyn, he married Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour, by all accounts, was his favourite queen. But Jane Seymour gave him no trouble. She just did what she was told. Jane Seymour gave him a son, Edward, and that son lived till he was about 16. And I thank one of our subscribers for helping me out with the history on this, that he was actually on the throne from 14 to 16 for a couple of years, and then he took ill and died. And then Mary Tudor took over, and then when she passed away, it was our Queen Elizabeth I, who was very strong, very noble, very long-reigning queen. And it's funny how both Queen Elizabeth I and both Queen Elizabeth II were very strong and noble, long-reigning queens, and both very fair in their, sort of attitudes towards people, very welcoming and very listen to people's problems and issues and try to do the best for the people. Queen Elizabeth I and our recent Queen Elizabeth II were both very noble women and very strong women, with a lot of respect for both queens. Now, our late Queen Elizabeth II, who passed away a couple of years back in 2021, she had on her crown the bee with the pearl, which came from Anne Boleyn's necklace. She had it set into her crown. She used it on certain royal occasions. You can see those crowns on display at the Tower of London in the crown jewels section, but they're not all on display. That one isn't at this minute on display, but most of the crowns are on display, and King Charles III's coronation crown is on display, what he recently wore last year, the year before when he got his coronation. Very, very interesting place to visit. But these places, these have a big role to play, and that era, these places, it would have been filled with, monks singing, chanting, worshipping, silent prayer. And I think while I'm on my own, we ought to go and take a walk into the abbot's private chambers because he doesn't like women, and he's already slung me out of there once. So these would have been the steps up to his bedroom, and there would have been 2 floors. The first floor, which has a dining area, and then the top floor would have been his bedroom. Now, I was in here before with Andy filming, and we got messages like, "Get out of here, I don't want you in here," and all of this. So it doesn't take kindly to women being in his private quarters. So let's just see if we can get some EMF activity in here now, and I'll show you this room properly. I'm going to set that up on the wall there. Now this would have been his private, the abbot, the head honcho. Yeah, you was the head honcho. You was the head honcho. And I'm a Lancashire witch. So, are you going to welcome me into your home? This would have been the cellar area where we stood now, the ground floor. First floor there was probably his dining room with the fire. And then I'm guessing up there was his private bedroom with another fire. And he kept himself nice and warm, and no doubt he would have been extremely wealthy. Let's keep an eye on the EMF meter just to see if we get any activity. Yeah, so my name's Alison, and I am related to the Pendle Witches of Lancashire. How do you feel about that? And I'm standing in your bedchamber, your private quarters. If you're unhappy with my presence, please make it known on this EMF meter. Because I am on the side of Henry VIII. I agree he should have plundered your monastery to take his riches to give to his new queen. Does that make you angry? Perhaps he's not even entertaining me at all. He's thinking, poor women, wouldn't even give him the time of day. That's how it was back then. The women took second place, they didn't count. They just cooked, cleaned, had babies. Very rarely, I think the common women, the sort of poorer end, did because they had to work along with their husbands to provide for their families. But as you got up the ladder, the more wealthier women, they were expected to stay home and keep house, entertain all the very important guests that the husband would bring. So unless they broke away and made a name for themselves, like certain writers and authors, like the Bronte sisters, Charlotte, Emily and Anne, and then Jane Austen. Elizabeth Gaskell was married, so she was able to write. She was allowed to because she could use her husband's name. And then we had George Eliot, who also had to write under a man's name because women weren't allowed to have a career of their own in those days. Women of quality anyway, women of nobility weren't allowed. And also in France, George Sand, she was a female writer. They all took men's names and they could get in print because they weren't allowed to use their own. And the 3 Bronte sisters, I was going to climb through the parsonage window here. I'm doing a runner. Yeah, so back in those days, writers, the 3 Bronte sisters, Charlotte, Emily and Anne, they had to use men's names, so they wrote under the names Curran Bell, Acton Bell and Ellis Bell. So the C was for Charlotte, the E was for Emily, and the Acton A was for Anne, so they all took different names so they could write. George Eliot was female, and George Sand was female, and they all took men's names because they weren't allowed to be printed in female in their own names. Charles Dickens, however, came along and campaigned that they should be printed in their own names, and thankfully to him, he started a household magazine in London in the 1850s, and he allowed women to write in their own names. So finally they got into print. And that was long after this monastery, so you can imagine how women were treated in those days, persecuted. Just have babies. That was it. You don't have a brain, just have babies. It was only kind of like 1900s, late 1800s, 1900s, when women finally got the vote in England. And it's only more recently, really, that Westminster has put through a law to say that women should be paid the same as men for the same jobs that they're doing. So it's been quite a journey, really, you know, for women to make their mark, really. And we've had such incredible famous women who've contributed so much. Like Florence Nightingale, the nurse. You know, if it wasn't for her, the hospitals wouldn't be as they are today. We wouldn't have all this system that we have today. And they've contributed so much. And they've had to, you know, really fight to be acknowledged. So, since you don't like women in your monastery, there are women in your monastery. How does that make you feel? And what do you want to do about it? If you're very angry, you flicker that for me, I'll know how you're feeling. You can rant and rave and jump around like we were at the Slipknot concert last night. It was a proper head-banging, foot-stomping session. And you can do the same if you're feeling angry. You too can do the same if you're feeling angry right now. It doesn't go... Do you know, it's really strange. Andy will get stuff happening all the time on the paranormal, and for me they tend to not come through. We're in the infirmary now. It was part of the duty of a Cistercian monk to care for the sick in the community. So that's what we were saying before when I said to you that their job was to look after people, they cared for people, they wouldn't throw people out. So this area was the hospital, the infirmary. Let's go in and see if we can get any sick people to come forward, perhaps. That's why they've got the herb garden back there. They would have grown all their own herbs to make medicines and tinctures. Medicines were called tinctures. They would just look up in the recipe book to make something for, you know, whether it was smallpox or measles or cholera or plague or just general sickness or whatever. They would have something to cure it. And really, the pharmaceutical tablets we've got today, they're just a modern version of the same thing. They're just a modern version of the same thing because back in those days they used to make it out of crushed leaves. You know, they get a mortar and pestle and grind leaves and things together in the plants and make, you know, the medicines. Whereas today, the pharmaceuticals we've got today, it's exactly the same. It's just in tablet form and they just powder it all down. You know, it's exactly the same. It's just a more modern method. So this was the infirmary. Have we got any people here in the infirmary that's sick? It's being tended to by the monks. Could you come forward and tell me what was wrong with you? This is where I need Andy here, really. He can act the bubonic plague. He could sort of be lurching around and drag his foot and do all the flipping noises to go with it. And he could really, that's probably why they come towards him, because he acts it all out and I think they relate to him. But if I start dragging my leg around now and lurching about, people are going to come and try and help me. They'll get a first aider. Best to do that when we're together, really. It's a popular belief that me and Andy have lost the plot already as it is, so let's not make it any worse right now. But yeah, even that, insanity. You know, there were hospitals. Bedlam in London. Bedlam Hospital in London was the insane hospital. And they only just recently found a lot of skeletons there. They were excavating the area to extend the train, the tube system. And they come across all these skeletons, so they had to, first thing they do is call in the forensic people to find out how old the skeletons are. It could date back to the Second World War, the First, anything really. When they checked the map and sort of dated the skeletons, it turned out it was the cemetery to the Bedlam Insane Hospital, London. So they're always back, but they're building on stuff. The problem in London is builders come along, buy it and build on it, and if they find stuff, they're not handing it in and not declaring it because it's interfering with their building plans. And I was talking to someone quite recently, I'm trying to think, I think it was in York, when we did York last Christmas. We were talking to a guy there who said they're finding stuff all the time in London, parts of skeleton and parts of this and parts of that, Roman, you know, goblets and things, but they're not handing it in because the council would cordon it off as an archaeological site, and then they go in and dig, and it can take 10 years or whatever to dig, and the building plans get put on hold. So the stuff is being found in London, but these glass buildings are going up left, right and centre, and they're not declaring the artefacts that they're finding, which is a bit naughty really. If there are any spirit people present, would you like to try and flick the MF meter lights, and then I can know that you're here? We're now going to leave the sick hospital and move on. So this was the infirmary. If there are any spirit people here at this monastery today, you came through before and told us the name Benedict, and you came and threw us out of your personal quarters. We'd like to know if you're going to welcome us and talk to us, or whether if you would like us to go, then you must tell us to leave. You can speak to me if you get close to this camera, we can hear your voice. And if you get close to my hand, you can flick the lights on this EMF meter, I'll know that you're standing there. Now we got some activity in this tunnel before when we walked through. Let's see if we get anything this time. If you're in this tunnel, please come forward. You were here before. I'm thinking it might have been someone just quickly passing through. You get that with spirits. The tunnels and passageways like this, they just walk quickly through and you pick them up and then they're gone. Same like normal people, you know, it's the same. Okay, so let's go and see if the cloisters are empty, and we'll go in there. Looks like we've got it to ourselves right now. This is a pretty creepy, spooky building. I think someone's coming up with a pram actually, so we might have to press on. I'll tell you what, let's go up there first, and then we'll come back, and then we don't get tangled up with mother and child. Not that I've got anything against it, but it's just very noisy, and we can't really do the paranormal when we've got like background noise and interference going on. A lot of these places we can only come during the day, that's why we have to get in and do it when we can. Yeah, she's gone in the cloisters, so let's have a look around here, and then when she's come out we'll go down there. Are there any spirit people here, please, in this huge cathedral church? Would like to come forward and make themselves known? I'm Alison. I was Catholic, well I was brought up Catholic, I was born brought up Catholic, I attended the Catholic schools and churches. I'm still a Christian, but I also practice the pagan magic art, because I do believe you can combine the two into one. The church was the most important building in the abbey. It was divided into separate areas, the most important being the presbytery where the high altar stood. It's a really creepy feel, because when you've got it to yourself it's really eerie. And there's some look, some more graffiti here. That looks like 17. And sometimes graffiti can go back, you know, to those eras. Some graffiti can really go back. If you go to the Tower of London, they've got graffiti down there from 1400s, 1500s, 1600s. It's amazing. Let's go back this way. I'm going to look out for graffiti now on the columns. I'm not talking recent stuff, because the older graffiti, they tend to put the coat of arms in and like a bit of a Latin and stuff like that, so you know whether it's new. I mean, like, look at this here, this is old, 1869. So even that's old graffiti, it's Victorian graffiti. So are there any Victorian people here, please, who used to enjoy this abbey? You graffitied your names into the wall. Your initials, JM and JD, are you still here? Would you like to come forward and flicker the EMF meter? Yeah, so you can get graffiti from all different eras, but the further back you go, the more artistic the graffiti. It's like if you go to Cleopatra's Temple at Aswan, a lot of them are submerged under the Nile now. They flooded the water over, but some of them are still there. And if you go to Cleopatra's tombs at Aswan, Napoleon's army have graffitied all over the columns and left the initials and when they were there. That in itself is history. Pretty magnificent building, this. But yeah, I've got a bit of an interest in historical graffiti. But if you go in the Tower of London, up into the main jail part where all the famous people were locked up and housed, they've all chiselled the coats of arms and left the names and put some Latin inscription. It's pretty incredible, really. This would have been the main church. This is where they would have come for all the services. Look at the size of this place. Stained glass windows and bells they would have had up there. And it's even now with the wind blowing through and it's all hollow. Just has such an atmosphere. Look at the shape of that window. Can you imagine that filled with stained glass? All that would have been robbed. All would have been robbed. People would have stolen it for their own houses. These would have been the side rooms, you know, where they would have put their robes on and got the vessels ready. Holy water probably in these troughs, I guess. Yeah, I'm thinking they would have dipped in there, the holy water. The night stairs. So this is where they used to come down to do midnight mass and stuff like that. These stairs here. Let's just put the EMF meter down. Let's see. Are there any monks coming up and down these night stairs? Would you like to come forward? I'm Alison, and I'm not meant to be here because I'm a female talking and you are all silent males. If you don't like my presence. The choir monks came down from their dormitory to attend the first service of the day at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's what them stairs are for. Okay. So, let's carry on. Let's go through here. Go down to the cloister now actually and see if we can get in there. What you tend to find when you're shooting to camera on your own, you get people following you around and trying to get in on the thing, and I'd rather people just stop and say, oh, what are you doing? And I'll talk to them, do you know what I mean? I'll get them in. But when they follow you around and try and like just shove their heads in, I'm like, why don't you just talk to me instead of like having to do this? I can see a fellow paranormal investigator up there. Who is it? It's Quasimodo. He's swinging from the bells. I better shut the fuck up in case he's running an EMF. Having a conversation with some minor spirit. I'll not interfere with Andy's filming because there's enough flipping nightmare people to do that. There is. A fellow investigator. Oh my god, he's setting off yet.
It's that ghostly sister.
We'll just say hello. The Hunchback of Notre Dame himself. Alright, carrying further on, carrying straight on. Let us go, let us go, let us go. Let's see what else we can find here. Remember them people I was telling you about? I swear to God. They're like walking authorities on this abbey. They must be ex-teachers or something. And everywhere I go, they're sneaking up like that, trying to get in on the camera, and I'm like, get fucked. Pardon for swearing on YouTube, but gets on my wick. They do it on purpose, some people, and I feel like saying, can I help you? You know what I mean? Come look at this yew tree. These were very popular in graveyards, these yew trees. They usually planted them at the head of someone's grave. So I'm wondering if perhaps this was a burial area. These yew trees, it was traditional to have these planted at your grave. So let's just see what it says over there. It's the cloister, all the major parts of the abbey. But there's nothing to say that, I mean, they had to be buried somewhere. Yeah, there's stone coffins over there. But there's got to be some other burial areas for the monks around somewhere. And a piece of little hint if you're going around old castles and old abbeys in England. These are yew trees, yeah, if you spot one of these. It's this classic graveyard tree. And that's the clue. That's the clue that there could be somebody buried. Because the thing is, they could have actually lost the records. Were you buried here? Is this your yew tree? Please come forward and speak to me, make yourself known. Yeah. Several castles in England will have a big yew tree in the courtyard, and the courtyard tends to be once a burial area. If you go in lots of old graveyards in England, like the Lizardine one at Chipping, Preston, Lancashire. And I thank the subscriber for coming forward and giving us some history, personal history about your great-great-great-grandmother's half-sister, being Lizardine herself. She has a large yew tree planted on her grave. So it was generally classed as the tree to plant on a person's grave. So if you see in any of these old buildings an old yew tree, you can guarantee that there's been some kind of burial there at some point. Right, so we've got a doorway, so let's see if we've got anybody coming through this doorway. Are you going to give me some activity on the EMF meter? Are you here? Did you used to use this doorway? Once again, you can see how low down, 4 feet in height roughly, the people were back then, due to them not having the same nourishment that we have today. They only had what we grew in England, really, fruit and veg. It's another short doorway. So they're talking about 4 foot height, and you know, even I have to bend down to get through there. So yeah, a lot of tropical fruits really didn't come in until sort of Henry VIII, Elizabeth I's time, when they sent Sir Francis Drake and Sir Francis Walsingham, you know, and Sir Walter Raleigh around the globe to bring back samples of birds, tropical birds, plants, fruits, vegetables, animals. We ended up having a whole zoo of tropical animals here. And they brought back people from different parts of the world, different islands. So this is why London has always been a multicultural city. For centuries it's been a multicultural city, because every time ships went out around the world, they picked passengers up and brought them back if they wanted to come back to London and try their luck here. So we had, particularly Sir Francis Drake in the late 1500s, was a very fair captain. He used to go to the West Indies, and if the people there had been persecuted by the Spanish, he would ask them, do you want to join my ship and I will give you safe passage to England? And they used to say, if the life is going to be better for us, then yes, we will. So Sir Francis Drake used to say to them, you're going to get paid the same as my men, you will get the uniform, you will get fed, you will get treated exactly the same. And he brought a lot of people on his travels back to England, to London, and then he made sure they got jobs, you know, either in kitchens or cooking, cleaning, generally housekeeping, and a lot of the men got jobs. If you remember, you know, in the old movies that you see, you've got the coach and horses, a bit like the Cinderella story where you've got the coach and horses and there's footmen at the back. So a lot of those footmen used to be people that he picked up from like West Indies, East Indies, anywhere around the world, that people wanted to come back to Britain for a better life. So it's always been a multicultural city, London, going back centuries. Always, forever it has been. And England also was the first to abolish the slave laws. We abolished the slave laws in 1834. And then we said that every man person that sets foot in England has freedom and is equal to the people of the British Isles, equal to the English, and you will get the same rates of pay and you'll get treated the same. So we did accommodate people from all over the globe, from 1500s, Francis Drake's time, but also more recently in the 1834 era when they lifted the slavery laws, and everybody was treated equal then in Britain. But I do think, in all fairness, there was still a hell of a lot of sort of racism from wealthy English looking down on slaves, people that have come from other countries that have got jobs as servants in the houses. Not all. There were a lot of good Christian families that accepted and welcomed those people into their homes and treated them as an equal, which they were supposed to by law. But unfortunately, you still did get a lot of sort of not being treated equal and being looked down on and things like that, and it's insane to me. It is just absolutely insane. This whole racism thing, this whole going back to the days of slavery, it's like, what makes white people, wealthy people, think that they are above, anybody of a different colour and a different culture? It's like, why? And where did that come from? It's this class system that thankfully has died out now. They thought that they were so above because they're white, and it's like, what difference does it make? What the hell really difference does it make? Do you know what I mean? It's like, thankfully now it's well dying out, and you only get rare, cases of it now. But it was, and I think America back in the 1950s and 60s was a lot worse. And South Africa also was a lot worse with the apartheid and all that. But Britain, and I'm proud to say, was very, very accepting and helped people to become free and live equally and have individual lives of their choice, without being sort of degraded, and they were treated as fairly and as equally as they possibly could for the times that they arrived in this country. Yeah, it's been an interesting abbey this, but it's a very cold windy day, so I'm going to go and find Andy now and meet up with them, and we're going to grab a cup of coffee and warm up. Whichever way he's gone, I have no clue, but we'll go and find him anyways. So yeah, it's a really good place to visit this, and if you've got kids, bring them up for the reindeer hunt, because they've got like a museum bit where the kids can go and colour and draw and play and stuff like that, and then they give you a map and you can bring them round and look for the reindeers. So it's pretty good. It's a good way for me, I think, because it's very hard to get kids interested in history, unless it's horrible histories or whatever. If you want to get them interested in these places, then bring them around for the reindeer hunt, give them a map and show them around in it, and I think that can generate some interest, because it's important that we hand these places down to the next generation and the generation after. It's important that we keep it in our heritage, because as we've got more and more people now moving from different parts of the world into England, we don't want to lose our history. We don't want to lose touch of all of this. We want to pass these stories down. We want to pass this history down and keep it alive so that it can be enjoyed by everybody. And movies, are an excellent way. Movies are a brilliant way to learn history. I always struggled with the history. I struggled at school with the history. I struggled a lot with the history. One of the best ways I learned history, Tudors, the series, that was really, really good to watch, to learn all about the Tudor era. And there's certain movies too that you can get which about history, which they're so good that it helps you learn the history better. So I always struggled with history books at school, and I always struggle with all of that. But films and TV series, Netflix series, and all that, a really good way to learn it. go and find Andy. He was skulking around the cloisters before. Let's go and see if he's still... See if we can find him anywhere. You might spot him before me. He's probably dangling from a bell rope. Doing his... he has to get the Hunchback of Notre Dame out of his system. Now they've reopened Notre Dame in Paris. Maybe I should take him there. He could swing from the bell pull then, can't he? And really get it out of his system once and for all. I'll give you one final look round before we end this episode. And once again, thank you for watching. And thank you very much for our subscribers. And thanks for commenting and getting in touch with us and helping us out with the history and stuff, because I do still struggle with the history a lot, I admit that. I only know what I know from reading fiction books, which are set in this different eras. And I only know what I know from watching certain box sets, Netflix series and films. So when it comes to history, I am self-educated that way. I haven't done any courses at all on history, so if I'm wrong in the history, I apologise. And I thank the people that have got in touch with me and helped me with the history here and there where I've struggled. And thank you once again for joining us on this journey. And please continue to support this channel. The more view times we get and the more subscribers we get, the more we can do and the longer we can stay making programs for you, because Andy and I do work 5, sometimes 6 days a week. We both have separate jobs, so we're very busy, and we do this at the weekend. So thank you very much for your time and for your interest. And if there's anywhere you'd like us to go and visit and do paranormal on, please let us know and we will try and get to that place. And thanks to you all. Take care.